The next part of our story would begin as we enter into the Whiskey Peak arc. Similar to the original timeline, Luffy and the Straw Hat Pirates would arrive to their first island in the Grand Line, that being Whiskey Peak. Following to the original story, the Straw Hats would drop off Mr. Nine and Miss Wednesday, just as they had before, with the two strangers that they had saved thanking them for their troubles before disappearing into the town of bandits, at least as it was told. Of course, Nami would have wanted to get out of there as soon as possible, but seeing as how the log post needed time to reset, they figured that this would be the best place to gather supplies and to plot their next move. When almost suddenly, the people of Whiskey Peak would begin parading around the Straw Hats like they were celebrity, wanting to treat them to a night of food, festivity, drink, and laughter. Of course, some in the Straw Hat crew, such as Zoro, Volko, and Nami, would make sure to stay on guard, while of course Luffy, Usopp, and Sanji found themselves getting swamped in the festivities. And the festivities were definitely to be had, as the drinks were flowing, the food was bountiful, and the music played all through the night. You could say that it was a party to rival all parties, and for Luffy and others, they couldn't lie and say that they weren't enjoying themselves. But of course, this would still turn out to be a trap, as the people of the town were actually bounty hunters in disguise, all being led by mysterious figures with strange coded names. The people of this group, the males, were given the designation of a number, while the females were given the designation of a specific day. Among those of the group, there would be those such as Mr. 8 and Mr. 9, as well as Miss Monday and of course Miss Wednesday, who was now followed with a large duck that she rode in the battle with, a duck named Karu. On top of that, there was the army of bounty hunters, 1,000 if so, but they called themselves 1,000,000 to be more intimidating. Unfortunately enough, Luffy, Sanji, and Usopp were still out cold from the festivities, but Volko, Nami, and Zoro had managed to keep their wits about them, knowing that something was going to be amiss. Standing back to back, both Zoro and Volko would fight together, with Zoro getting a chance to try out his newly formed three-sword style, with his eternal emerald sword created from the lantern ring that he had been given. But that wasn't the only aspect of the ring's abilities that Zoro would test out, as in the midst of combat, even while Zoro was fighting, he could project and create swords from any place that he wanted to, from any direction that was within his line of sight, and with enough reforce of mind and will, he could basically fight with an infinite amount of swords. For Volko, he was rather impressed. Of course, he would have preferred if Zoro could be a bit more imaginative with the power that he had been given. But in the end, Zoro had to make it all of its own. And for the bounty hunters to try to capture them, they found themselves in fear of the Green Swordsman, because he could create up to 1,000 swords at once. Every time a large group tried to attack him, no matter which direction, a sword would appear, countering their blades with its own, striking them down just as quickly. And then there was Volko, just viewed as an elderly man fighting with an old and tired-out weapon like a trident, but yet he was able to wield the three-pronged spear gracefully and with balance, with enough force and weight to strike a heavy blow. In a short time, Zoro and Volko would make short work of the bounty hunters in the area, and just in time as Luffy would awaken to see what had happened. But unlike in the original timeline, Luffy wouldn't immediately assume that Zoro had done something irreprehensible, such as striking down the people of the town for no reason, especially with Volko to help smooth things over, and to explain that the whole situation had been nothing but a trap. Of course, The members of this mysterious organization were still reeling for a fight, but all of that would change as yet another pair would arrive, one calling himself Mr. Five with his partner, Miss Valentine. However, they weren't there for the group of pirates that had shown up, but rather they had been given another mission. You see, this mysterious group was known as Baroque Works, and the reason for their existence was to commit crime on a much more secretive level, to run a criminal empire from the shadows. And when working in the shadows, you have to make sure that there's nothing that could expose you to the light, especially a couple of spies, which unfortunately enough, the spies would turn out to be none other than Miss Wednesday and Mr. 8. Miss Wednesday in particular was not just some ordinary girl. She was Princess Vivi Nefertari, and Mr. 8 was her personal assistant. Vivi was of the Nefertari family, the rulers of the Alabasta kingdom, the kingdom that Baroque Works had set their sights on. As such, Mr. Five, along with Miss Valentine, had arrived to deal with the treacherous royal family member and her assistant once and for all. But in the midst of battle, the now exposed Vivi would find herself at the mercy of the pirates whom she had been trying to capture. There was no point in trying to feign ignorance or play dumb, because now she was in dire need of assistance with nowhere to turn. Volko, even while being a member of a pirate crew, still had a more chivalrous and regal side to him. Thus, he was willing to assist in their escape, as they fought off against the likes of Mr. Five and Miss Valentine, with Luffy and Zoro assisting as well. As they were making their way back to the Going Merry, Igaram would explain the direness of the situation, that by all means, Princess Vivi had to get back to the kingdom of Alabasta by any means necessary. Of course, he was going to do what he could to help buy them a chance to escape, even going as far as to take on a disguise looking like Vivi and leaving in another ship. Hopefully, if there were anyone following them, this could give them the advantage that they needed, a chance to escape. But of course, Baroque Works had their fingers everywhere, and there were a few more operatives that had come along the way. And for those who were eavesdropping on the conversations being had, the moment that Baroque Works' name had come into light, that meant that more people were now on the hit list. Among them, Nami, Zoro, Luffy, and Volko, since they were in the vicinity when the name of Baroque Works was being discussed. Still, though, Nami, among all of them, wasn't interested in doing any charity. No, if they were going to do anything of this magnitude, it was going to have to come at a price. Igaram explaining that for their troubles, the royal family could offer them up to 1 billion berries. And that was more than enough to change Nami's mind. In fact, she was the first one to be friendly to Vivi, gathering her things, her duck, and all the like, and throwing it straight on to Mary. Because now, Vivi wasn't just a burden or some form of charity. No, she was the meal ticket, the golden goose, if you will, or the princess that rode on a yellow duck. You get the point. She was dollar signs, or berry signs, and she was the golden hen through which all of their fortunes lie. As for Luffy and the others, there was no point in trying to overrule Nami, especially when it came to the money. Plus, she was the navigator, so if they were going to go anywhere, it would be through her assistance. But they would also get assistance from another unlikely source. From a woman, dressed in a long white coat. Her skin, a fair tan. Her hair, as dark as a starless sky. She called herself Miss All Sunday. She was aboard the Going Merry, watching as the fake ship with the fake Vivi was roving by in the waters. She watched as the ship would explode along with the others, fearing for the worst as they had figured Igaram had been killed in the blast. A furious Vivi would turn to Miss All Sunday, expecting the worst from the member of Baroque Works. But Miss All Sunday had been there for something entirely different. Of course, she brought a rather unfortunate end to Mr. 8, but she also came with glad tidings, because she had some information that Vivi needed to know. It came to their boss, someone who was a recluse, so much of a recluse that Vivi didn't even know his real name or what he looked like. But Miss All Sunday was all too eager to inform the girl. Their famed boss, Mr. Zero, was none other than the famed pirate turned warlord, Crocodile. But that's not all she came with. She even had an eternal log pose that was capable of taking them to an island that was much closer to Alabasta and would make their journey a lot easier. But Luffy would immediately disregard it, as he didn't feel like taking orders from Miss All Sunday, and, quite frankly, no one trusted her. But she would take her leave for now, with the warning that she had given, allowing for them to do with the information as they wished. Of course, this meant that Vivi would have to do a lot of explaining, as now the truth had come to light. Vivi would tell the Straw Hats everything that had happened, of how her royal family were engaged in a civil war with a rebellious group of Alabasta, and this war could threaten to destroy the country as they knew it. But that wasn't all. The reasons behind the war, behind the rebellion, it had all come from a shadowy organization known as Baroque Works. For Vivi, she had been given the distinct assignment of trying to infiltrate Baroque Works, to figure out who the leader of this organization was, and to try to find a way of bringing them down before they brought down Alabasta. But unfortunately, despite her efforts, it seemed that her cover had been blown, along with the cover of her assistant, Igaram, who had been Mr. 8, and had now tragically lost his life in the process. But what was more disturbing was hearing of the name Crocodile. Unlike Luffy, who, much like his canon self, isn't really one to pay attention to the news. He wasn't the type of person that would read a newspaper or listen to a radio din-din mushy. He didn't care about the goings-on of the world. No, true to his canon self, Luffy was still as much of a free spirit and a free thinker as he'd always been, just with a different moveset and fighting style. Although you could say that this version of Luffy is still as immature as he's always been, but he's not a total idiot. That was thanks to the training and the leadership of Vulko in his life. At the very least, Luffy knew how to conduct himself and conduct his business on a day-to-day basis. But that didn't take the childish immaturity out of him. But for Vulko, he was the type of person that paid attention to the news of the world. He had to. It was how he survived. And when he heard the name Crocodile, everyone could see that there was a tense look on his face. Vivi was aware of who he was, and same with Vulko. "What exactly are you worried about?" Zoro would ask. "A guy named Crocodile, it can't be that scary." "You don't know the half of it. Crocodile is a member of the Warlord faction." "The Warlords? I think I've heard of them," Nami would say. "They're a group of pirates. But not just any pirates. They're pirates that have been hired by the world government Essentially glorified lapdogs and bounty hunters all the same. So pirates that work for the world government, Sanji would say. Sounds like a bit of irony to me. Oh, that's just the beginning. They're pirates that have their bounties frozen. The moment that they become members of the Warlords system, they're basically given free range all through the world. They're given territory, money, anything you can think of. There's nothing that's not given to them, all in exchange for their services. Whenever the government's fighting a battle, they'll send the warlords to that area. If there's a war, they're going to fight it. If there's a skirmish, they're involved. There's nothing that the government can't ask them to do. In fact, Volko said, looking at Zoro, that little dispute you had with Mihawk back in the East, he too is a member of the Warlord faction. What? How else do you think that someone as infamous as Mihawk can travel through the seas without any disturbance? It's not just because of how strong he is. Although I'd have to take a guess that even if he wasn't a warlord, the government really wouldn't want to deal with the likes of him. He'd end up cutting through too many fleets, and it wouldn't be worth the hassle trying to arrest him. So it's better to have someone like that on your side, and just stay out of his way. But yeah, he's a member. How long have the warlords existed then? Nami would ask. It's a fairly recent concept. They're barely even 30 years old in existence altogether. So it's only natural that you guys wouldn't have heard of them, since the warlords have existed just before you guys were even born or thought of. And even then, I doubt that any of you really pay attention to the world news to even see what's going on. Volko would then turn to Vivi with a serious look on his face. If Crocodile really is the one behind Baroque Works, then I'm afraid that your country's in more dire straits than you thought, Your Highness. You're not just dealing with some random pirate. You're dealing with a pirate that secretly has the backing of the world government behind him. And if he's looking to cause dissension within your country, then that means in all likelihood, when your country falls to civil war, he plans to pick up the pieces of what remains, and all of Alabasta will be under his control. But why? Why would he do such a thing? It's obvious. Money, power, it could be a whole host of reasons, or maybe no reason at all. Alabasta is one of the more mightier of the kingdoms aligned with the world government. To have its resources at your disposal, it'd be nothing short of miraculous. Before long, everyone would turn to Luffy, wondering what exactly they should do. Of course, if the money was really what Igaram had said it was, then 1,000,000 berries was nothing to sneeze at. But was it really worth all this trouble? Getting involved in a civil war between a country that was under the control of a warlord connected to the world government? The type of people that you don't want to get involved with, running into the Marines and such. But Luffy would simply look to Vivi, as he had only one question. You gonna feed us? Luffy would ask. What? Are you gonna feed us? We help you out with this. You're gonna feed us. All of us. But me, especially me. Yes, if food's what you want, and alright, we're in. What? Huh? Hold on, Nami would say. Don't think you're getting out of paying us that 1,000,000 berries. I don't care how much you have to feed his gullet. You're feeding my purse. I mean, yes, if the money's in the food is what you want, but seriously, is that it? Yeah, we're not like most crews, Zoro would say. The captain just wants to make sure he gets his pound of meat, And Nami, well, I don't think there's anything she won't do for a berry. Ugh! Ow! Don't go speaking about Nami like that, Sanji would say, as he kicked Zoro in the back of the head. Damn it! Kick me like that again and I'll fillet you, chef boy. Oh yeah? I'd like to see you try. You could have the world's sharpest knife and you wouldn't even know the first thing about fillet. I promise you, I'll figure it out. Volko would have to calm both of them down, as now the Straw Hats were setting off on the next leg of their adventure. In the grand scheme of it all, they'd be making their way to the great kingdom of Alabasta, a country on the verge of civil war and collapse, held by a shady organization of pirates seeking their own means. Whatever they are, only time would tell. But for now, the log pose was reset, and for Luffy, he was just looking for an adventure, as they set off on the next leg of their journey to the island of Little Garden. Meanwhile, a black submarine descends from Reverse Mountain, making its way into the Grand Line. This black sub is only known to a few. Prized by the world government, a task force of elite soldiers are sent out with a specific mission in mind. They are known as the Black Manta Corps of the world government. And now their current mission: to bring in two potentially prized subjects. Two pirates, a part of a newly found crew created in the East Blue. Members of the Straw Hat Pirates, Volko Nudius, and their leader, the captain, Monkey D. Luffy. This concludes One Piece, King of the Sea, What If Luffy Was Aquaman, Season 2, Part 2 of the Alabasta Saga. As always, if you enjoyed today's video and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that's to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned tomorrow evening as we continue with One Piece, King of the Sea, What If Luffy Was Aquaman, Season 2, Part 3. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings, signing off, and I'll see you next time.